Hello everybody and welcome to the Performance Health webinar. My name is Nicola Goldsmith and I'm the Clinical Ambassador for Performance Health. And we're just going to spend the next hour or so looking at some different ways that we might want to exercise. I've called this all fingers and thumbs, but actually we're including wrists as well. Exercising with imagination. And I thought we'd start with a tiny little bit of theory, and then we're just going to do a lovely practical exploration of some ideas. Now, most of this, many of you will probably know, but if you can pick up a couple of hints and tricks along the way, then that's my job done. So don't forget that if you've got questions, you can pop them into the chat, and we'll try and make sure that there's time at the end. And lovely with them, we'll have a little look at the chat as we get towards the end, and we'll try and answer some questions. So get thinking, and we'll try and make this as interactive as we can. So on to a little presentation. So exercising the hand. Well, we all know that exercising, let's face it, is pretty boring. And we know that our patients go away with the best of intentions, but the reality is, when they get home, that enthusiasm will begin to wane. So what can we do to make sure that our patients keep exercising in the way that we want them to? Because we know how important it is with pretty much every single patient we'll see in hand therapy for sure, and physio. So a few just basic principles. We've got to be as specific as possible. So we're going to look at some of those really intricate little specific exercises around the hand that sometimes the patients find handling quite tricky, and it's quality, not quantity. So I spend a lot of time saying to my patients in this clinic space, I would rather you did half the number of exercises well than double the number of exercises badly. So let's just see if we can find ways of helping them do that. So for example, using some form of video, following a line drawing for a hand exercise is incredibly difficult, or even a photograph. Video is by far and away the best. So you may have in your trust, in your workplace, a program that you could use, and of course you can use that wonderful free hand therapy app from the Chelsea team. But also don't forget, every patient comes in with a mobile phone, well, almost every patient. And you can record their exercises for them on their phone. That doesn't break any GDPR rules of you using your phone. So that is a really easy adjunct to use. Also, try and make the exercises functional. So wherever possible, try to use everyday objects. Try and use activities of daily living. Try and use remedial activities. Elaine and Sarah and I, my two partners in NES, we have endless conversations about exercise. What is an exercise and what is an activity? Well, I mean, that we could spend the whole hour debating, but I'm going to merge the two together today and be realistic. I remember a cousin of mine going off with his very mild hypermobility to see a physio. He was 14 at the time and got sent home with 26 exercises to do. Well, that's just not going to happen, is it? People are just going to self-select from 26. So try and prioritize, try and make sure that what we use is absolutely specific. So I want to have a quick, and I promise quick, because it is lunchtime, run through some of the anatomy. And we must remember that when we're prescribing the activities and exercises, we want to make sure that we are really, really specific to the muscles that we're seeing, that we're treating in the hand. So we've got the deep muscles on the volar surface. So we've got predominantly FDP is our big muscle bulk, and FPL is of course a very strong muscle as well. Then we've got the next layer up as we come superficially. You've got our FDS, flexor digitorum superficialis, sitting on top, another really strong big muscle, brachioradialis, that works as an elbow flexor, and of course control in supination and pronation, really important muscle. And then our superficial muscles lying over the top. We've got essentially our wrist flexors sitting uppermost, just underneath the skin. Then when we go on the dorsal surface, you've got the extensor carpi radialis, brevis and longus lying as part of that common extensor muscle bulk that we have over the dorsal aspect of the forearm, with the abductors and extensors of the thumbs. And there's been some really interesting research. If we go to the superficial muscles of the dorsum of the hand, now we know that we get quite often, you can see here your extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and your extensor digitorum communis and minimi. And we know that these muscles are very commonly getting overuse syndromes. And I've been reading some interesting information around why is it when we tend to do function with our flexors, that it's actually our extensors that are more vulnerable to this overuse. And it seems to be that there were some great studies published in 2020 and 2022 that showed that actually the flexors in our forearm are really good at going between the whole cycle of contraction and relaxation, whereas actually the extensors are not, and they essentially remain on all the time. So this is why we get more overuse and more problems in the extensors. Then we've got, of course, the muscles of the thumb that are hugely complicated. I'm not going to go into all of these, but and excuse my line drawings, but you've got your deep muscles, flexor pollicis brevis, around the thenar eminence, and you've got your opposer digiti minimi and abductor digiti minimi on the hypothenar. And then if we come to the superficial level, sitting over the top of them, you've got abductor pollicis brevis, flexor pollicis brevis, over the top of opponens pollicis on the thenar side. And then you've got on the hypothenar side, you've got your flexor digiti minimi with adductor and opposer as well. And don't forget your enormous adductor pollicis. On the dorsal surface or dorsal radial surface, you've got the first dorsal interosseous, and you can see what a big muscle this is, and we might have a little look at how to isolate the first dorsal interosseous muscles with some exercises. It's quite tricky to isolate that out from the other muscles. And then finally, we've got our intrinsics. We've got our lumbricals on the left. This is a volar view, and don't forget that in some people you've got this anatomical anomaly where the lumbricals actually in their extended position, they will go into the carpal tunnel. And then you've got your 3 palmar and 4 dorsal interosseous muscles. This is your formulation of your intrinsic muscles. So we will be talking, when we're looking at specific exercises, about whether we're trying to exercise the intrinsics or the extrinsics, in other words, all the muscles that are sitting in the forearm, performing for our fingers and wrists in the hand. So we also want to think functionally. Really, our hands that's what they're for, stating the obvious. So we really want to make sure that as we prescribe exercises, we're thinking about the function that individual person has. So I love this, which is, I think, the most recent taxonomy available for looking at human grasp. And Feeks, he split it into those functions we do with the thumb adducted and those that we do with the thumb abducted. And you can see, obviously, there are many more abduction positions, but this takes into account, really everything. So rather than just spherical grip, for example, you've got sphere finger, and you've got precision sphere, and you've got power sphere. So it gives you that option to be able to be a bit more specific. So principles of exercise, I'm not going to go into, obviously, all of the detail around how we exercise. And you can see on the right-hand side, just so list of different types of exercise we can do. We're really going to look predominantly at resisted exercise today, but we need to also be very mindful of how we grade it. Positioning, speed, combining movements, altering and manipulating repetitions, frequency, and changing resistance. And whatever we do, we need to try and make sure that we are personalizing these exercises for the individual so they're meaningful for them. And before we finish and start having a look at hands-on, a few facts around grip strength. Grip strength is strongly correlated to total muscle strength in the body. We know that men or boys and girls have approximately equal grip strength until around the age of 12 to 13, and then males become stronger than females. We know that right-handed people are stronger than left-handed people in their dominant hand. We know, in fact, now there's been a massive investigations around grip strength being a predictor of mortality, disability, and disease, which is extraordinary, that it can be a predictor of everything from cardiovascular health, diabetes, cancers, risk of falls. Again, I have papers and papers and papers on this if anybody wants to read any of them. And we know that grip strength correlates to health-related quality of life. So it's important that we keep our grip strength going. So we're going to just explore some things around which exercises our patients find difficult, how we can be as specific as possible, and what we can do with the available equipment. Now, I just put that picture in the bottom right-hand corner. I was just doing a little internet search, and honestly, there are some of the most extraordinary things available out there. I'm not in any way suggesting that this sort of accordion-like device on the thumb and index finger is a good idea, but I've just put it there as an example of some rather unusual things to find. So let's go to our live camera. I'm just going to put my computer in my drawer. And let's start by having a little look at some of the exercises that our patients, again, we call this all fingers and thumbs, they find it really difficult. We handle hands all day, day in, day out. We know how to handle them, but our patients find it really difficult, particularly, those who are not maybe so good at 2D to 3D. So let's just have a look at some alternatives. Now, generally, I've found that patients, if they've got to do, for example, isolated PIP joint flexion, some of them find it really easy to hold behind and flex against. But some of them find that incredibly difficult. They don't know where to put this other hand, so they're better off on the table and just blocking and following this through. Of course, that does require full supination, or you need to have them up against a wall, for example, so they can actually do it in that mid-pro supination position. Another one that people find particularly difficult is isolated PIP extension. So if you explain to someone they need to put their hand behind, and this is where video really comes in, and they need to block their proximal phalanx. Remember, they won't necessarily know what that means, and then do an isolated PIP extension, and how different that feels to just full extension of the fingers. Other ones that patients find tricky, isolated EDC function. So if we curl the fingers in to a gentle fist, now not really tight, there's no need, really gentle fist, and just literally bring the knuckles alone. Can you see how the wrist is coming as well? So we want the wrist to stay nice and still. That's it, brilliant. So we're just isolating that movement. And of course, if you're trying to work on tethering, then you're going to want to do this exercise in a whole variety of different wrist positions. So you're going to want to do it here, and here, and here, and they will actually pull in different places. What about for that first dorsal interosseous muscle? So the big muscle in here. So we could do it by just isolating, doing abduction flat on the table. That's nice and easy. You could add some resistance from the other hand through motion, or of course still and make it isometric, or you can do it against gravity. So move the hand this way up and get the thumb moving here, and you can feel the muscle. I often get my patients actually feel, so they know they're activating things well. Okay. Now, what about making a little O shape? This is a bit subtle here. Hopefully you've got the close-up camera on. And what you're going to do is you're going to just tilt that index finger, PIP joint. Oh, brilliant. There you go. Anyone would have thought I showed you that one earlier. Okay, so we're bringing up, and this really, I mean, I don't know if you can see well enough, but on Wissam's hand, this is really making a huge, big contraction. So if I then ask her to do it against a resistance, that's even harder work here. Yeah, we could even do it with sliding an elastic band over, pop that in, there we go. And then we're going to ask her to do the same again against, these can just relax. There we go. And there's your resistance. Remarkable how much I use elastic bands, seriously. Okay, that works really nicely. Then control for osteoarthritis, for example, or hypermobility of the thumb. It's another one that people find tricky. Now, if you watch me trying to do circumduction, as I come around through range, as I come into that fully opposed flex position, my MCP joint is heading in towards the hyperextension position. I can't control it, so I need to actually support underneath my joint to maintain that control. Whereas in this lovely young thumb that doesn't have arthritis, we're going to do an entire routine around, but we're going to want to keep the thumb tip flexed. So we're going to take FPL and EPL out of the picture and slow it down. Everything slowly and controlled. Keep the tip bent, go through, and it's quite tricky. You really have to concentrate. Yeah, and then one of my favorite ones for OA thumb is to what I call the squash fly exercise. So imagine you've got a fly on the side of your index finger here, and we're going to very gently, so it's not forced, very gently, it's all about control, place the thumb here, and what we're going to do is a very subtle rolling, and you can see that Wissam can manage to keep her joints in that lovely, oh, it's just going a little bit. Okay, now if I try and do that, as I do it, can you see, I am no longer able to, unless I have to really, really concentrate to be able to do this movement without my MCP joint dropping. So it really is about slowly, gently controlled. It's quality, not quantity. So those are just some of the tricky ones to get your fingers around. So I thought we'd have a look through a whole lot of different equipment. I'm going to start with Theraband because I think it's something that all of us have available all the time. So here I've got some Theraband. Obviously, it's graded in yellow to red to green to blue to black. Now, I've never even used blue and black, to be honest, with hands and wrists. And really, with shoulders over time, green is enough. So what can we do with Theraband? Well, first of all, it's very, very versatile. With my patients who are mainly musicians, they're on the road all the time, and I need to keep them exercising. And all I love about Theraband is no one has the excuse that it's too difficult to carry with them, right? This can go with you anywhere. It's so tiny, it's so easy. And it can just hook over doors, it can hook over the back of it onto a door handle, you can put it around your feet, and we'll have a little look at that. And it gives that really excellent, controlled, gentle motion. So a lot of people use small weights, and I do use weights, but I find that I get better feedback from bands. And it helps people feel the resistance right through range. It also gives you really good visual feedback as to whether the motion is controlled or whether it's a bit wobbly. And of course, we really don't want anything to be wobbly before we progress it. We need it to be controlled when we progress it. So with band, you can see that really easily. So let's just have a look at a few exercises with the band. So if you would like to put those two ends underneath your right foot and have the band up here, that's perfect. Lovely. Right, well, that's quite hard. Do you want to give yourself a little bit less than that? Really? Yeah. All right. You're braver than me. Right, again, the other way up. Now, this is again one that we need to often do. So here we have an isometric wrist exercise because we're holding the forearm completely still. We've got really quite a strong resistance, and this arm is completely still. So she is holding that wrist in place. So these wrist extensors are really firing hard. We can also move it through range with control. Down, slowly and gently. And I quite often get people to count their way through it so that they don't go too fast. And what you want is you want somebody to be able to move right through range without a wobble, in order that you know that they're ready to upgrade it. Now, a very tempting thing to do with a wrist that's struggling will be for the fingers to come on up with it. So we don't want EDC, we don't want the finger extensors to be part of this exercise. So I will often just give people something, even as something as simple as a pen, to hold just to stop them cheating. Brilliant. Let's just unhook you, but while you're still there, you let go. That's it. While you're still there with the pen, that brings me to a really lovely little intrinsic exercise with the pen. Things we've got the pen out. So this roll, intrinsic roll, keep the wrist still. It's all about this. This is a really lovely intrinsic roll. Now, of course, Kristen's got a perfect hand, so she's making everything look super easy, but it isn't necessarily that easy. Okay, so we can work with Theraband on the table. I like working with it over a surface with the hand over the end, but I also going to work usually with some Theraband on hooks. So just to show you, so I've had 3 hooks put onto my wall, and here we've got some Theraband. So I might want to be teaching, for example, a really nice scapular control movement. I can check that somebody's got nice soft knees, and what I'm wanting to do is make sure they're not wobbling like this. Why I love band, because it's so smooth and it's so easy for someone to get the feedback as to what they're doing. You want to have a little go? Are they latex free? So the bands are latex free. The and we're going to have a little look at this. The tubing is latex free as well. Interestingly, the quality of the band changed when it became latex free. And one of the things I really like about this is it's very predictable. Some of the other ones you find around, even the gentlest of them, really very, very strong resistance, which for hands and wrists is not going to work. Okay, so gently, mind the bump. Is it? Okay, so yeah, so we're going to work, just as an example, we can work in like a rowing position. Okay, really nice for trapezius and rhomboid, and your posterior deltoids and whatever. So just to get an idea of why it's really useful to have hooks on the wall, you want to gently let go of that. But I'll also show you, a lot of people worry about what can they do if they've got a hand injury. They're not allowed to exercise with the hand, but they want to keep their shoulders going. So you can work by just placing a knot into the band so that you could, and you can have 2 obviously, and so that you can actually do the exact same thing and not include the hand at all. And I really like that. You can also do that with these different bands here as well, with the tubing. I've put a big knot in this one, so that holds in the hand. So this, yes, you have one in each hand, but that stops them from sliding. So you could either put big knots in it, or you can put loops in it. Now, I did struggle a little bit with figuring out why would I ever use tubing rather than using band, because I'm a band user, and I struggled. So I took this to the 36 hand therapists that were on the course that I was teaching last week, and like, right, who can help me here? Why would you use this over and above that? And we came up with a few things. It is stronger. That's the first one. So the yellow does not relate to the yellow with Theraband. Okay, it's stronger. It probably relates to somewhere between red and green, but it's the same in terms of if we swap you from the yellow to the red, you'll feel that the grading colours is the same. So one of the things was it doesn't have that residue, that powder on it. So some people don't like the feel of that powder. And if you're a hairy man, it doesn't stick to the hairs as it runs across the body. So if you're doing something like a resisted pronation, this apparently, because I'm not a hairy man, so how will I know? But apparently, if you are, this can be really quite uncomfortable as the band catches on the hairs, which it doesn't do with the tubing. So there we go. We found a reason why you might want to use tubing over and above the bands. Right, let's go back to our seats. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of the hand therapist's favourite friends, Putty. Now, it's so versatile. This is usually the size pot that I recommend for people to get if they're using it for the hand, which is that 4 ounces, 113 grams. It comes in its individual pots. Obviously, you can get it in much bigger or much smaller, and of course, it's very heavily graded. So this is a soft, and this is a medium soft. But actually, the difference between the two is really quite significant. You just have a feel of that. That's really, it's quite warm in this room. And the heat of your room will make a difference. But it's really lovely for grip strength, for pinch strength. We use this one, it's nice and soft, and I don't want to cause you any harm. That would be a disaster. So you could, for example, I could ask you to make that into a ball. And think about those functional grips. So if you watch with Sam as she moves the putty into, she's using that lovely spherical, but she's using a powered spherical. And when she wants to try and make it more perfect, I think you'll find she'll use a precision spherical and some nice tripod pinch to try and smooth it all off. So it is very versatile. It is you picking up more of those different types of grip. I'm going to now ask you to squeeze it into a sausage. So try and make it in and turn it and squeeze it and turn it and squeeze it. So really nice for both intrinsic and extrinsic flexors. Okay. We can roll it. So really nice for that finger extension, wrist extension. Now that might be better with a slightly bigger bit, but actually that's fine. But we can also do that with things like this, which we're going to come to, things like our can-do bar, which might be quite often.
Flex bar.
Yep, the Theraband flex bar, exactly. They follow the really nice yellow, red, green, blah, blah, blah. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so one of my favorites, put some marbles into our putty, cover it over, and ask you to find them. And that's really lovely for those dexterity, those pinch grips, the power grip. Now, obviously, this is in soft putty. Whoa! That's your one. Beautiful. Okay. And you can see actually, again, how the manipulation, it's really nice. So again, is this an exercise or is this an activity? The debate's out there. You could make creations. So if you make it into a nice bun, pop it on the table, and we're going to put your fingers into it, and then we're going to open out. Now, we don't often do anything in daily activity that uses our fingers with power to open. Our fingers used in power to close. But when we've got horrible PIP joint, which I think might be the subject of the next webinar, but we'll see, we'll definitely do one at some point, you really need to find exercises that encourage people to use that central slip really well, particularly if you're blocking it. So this is quite a nice one if you want to just put your fingers in and open them out. So it's quite hard, isn't it? Beautiful. Okay. And then we could use it to wend in and out of the fingers. So I'm going to wind it in between. And we can use this for adduction. So keep the fingers nice and straight and squeeze it together. So again, really, your imagination is all that prevents you to do whatever you want with Putty, to be fair. It really is very, I often will get people to make an octopus. So I want the head first, and then I want them to pull out 8 legs. And that's really nice for that powered pinch. Okay, so why might we want to use Putty rather than sponges? So here we've got these resisted sponges. Now, we've all had a bit of a hassle getting hold of sponges recently, but speak to your rep, and we know that this is resolved. So we have yellow, pink, blue. Oh, I didn't bring a green one, but then green. If you feel the difference between them, they really are very reliably different. And again, they grow in exactly the same color format as all the other Theraband products, so you can really get used to that as a process. Yesterday, for example, I had a patient who is just a couple of weeks post trapeziectomy, and she's sitting, when she's sitting in comfortable position, she likes sitting adducted with her thumb. Of course, we don't want her abducted. She wants to spend a bit of time out of her splint, so that's fine. So I've said to her, sit out of your splint, but just with the yellow sponge in between. So it's no resistance, she's not pushing against it, but it's really light, and it's just going to position her in a perfect position. So even for something as simple as that, a sponge, you couldn't do that with Putty because it would just melt away, turn into a triffid. So sponges are really nice. They're really convenient. They're easy to keep in your pocket. They're not messy, but maybe they're a little bit more restrictive. Of course, you've got the narrow end and you've got the wider end. So you can do all your different types of pinch grip. So whether you do just your pure pinch, your tripod pinch, your 5-fingered pinch, we can do an intrinsic plus, so with the fingers flat, so we're really, that's lovely, like so. We can do it like intrinsic minus, perfect. And we can do a big, strong fist. One of the things I love about sponges is that you really can work with resistance through the whole of range. So if I give you one a bit harder, that'd be easier for you to show. And it really does squeeze to nothing. So you really are using resistance right through its range. Whereas some of the other things we're going to look at, you'll see they just get to a point where they get stuck. So one other thing, I cut them up all the time. So if you're wanting to do some nice intrinsic exercises, we're going to put 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to add an elastic band. So like I said, I use elastic bands for everything. Squeeze and open. And how simple is that? Simple, convenient, easy. Okay, cool, lovely. Right. We do have these little Theraband balls. They also come, covered in the that same sort of powder, but that won't last very long. Again, they follow exactly the same. So this is what they look like. They follow the same convention. So this one is supposedly 0.68 of a kilo, and then here we've got 1.36, and this one is 2.27, and so on and so on, up blue and black. The thing is that the yellow one really is the only one you can squeeze to almost nothing if you want to work right through range. Okay, but if you try and do that with even the next one up, even with the someone strong, it gets stuck. It also is a bit too small for all the fingers to be part of everything. Your little finger, one or other, your index or your little finger is going to drop off. So you're not actually exercising quite as much as you maybe are intending. But for pinch activities, precision activities, it's really lovely. So where I use a table tennis ball for osteoarthritis, and I get people to manipulate it, and if I use that, you might see I've written numbers on here, so I get them to move their thumb, always going towards, that's it, the ulnar side, and get them to find this. You could equally do that with this, which is a little bit heavier. It has a nice feel to it, to be fair. It has a nice swoosh to it. And it might be nice for those dexterity activities where you want people to manipulate things. So maybe can you swap the yellow and the red? Brilliant. And then swap it again. It's quite tricky, a bit like Chinese balls. It's not easy, is it?
No.
But actually, they do have quite a nice feel to them, don't they? So, so that's why you might use those potentially. Now let me show you something else. Here we've got this, which is the Rollion Ulti Grip. Now these fit into the hand like so, and they have each of the fingers individual. Now my musicians love this. They've all found these. I'm not overly convinced for most people, but actually for a wind player, for example, who is using powered fingers in that restricted position, they're never moving into a full fist. Actually, this is perfect because it definitely replicates functionally what they're doing. And when you get it, it cleverly comes with this extra piece. So if I wanted, for example, the little and ring finger to be in a single push, you can actually merge them together, which is quite nice. So everyone just comes with that ability. And of course, again, yellow, red, green, blue, black, right? Same old, which is really nice because you can just rely on that whole sequence all the way through. It's really good for that global flexion. You could do intrinsic plus movement like so, so if you keep it away from the hand. So we're really working here, lumbricals. Much more difficult, isn't it? Yeah. So controlled. You can do individual fingers, one by one. But again, anyone that needs to isolate the fingers might actually really enjoy having something like that, because it does give you that ability to be that sensitive to it. Right, let's make us a little bit of space. Right, here we've got our Theraband flex bars. Now they come, again, guess what? Yellow, red, green, blue, blue. Going to be totally honest, the difference between yellow and red, almost nothing. So if you need in your clinics, I would go yellow and green. And actually, you probably don't need the red as well, because if you feel, you just do a very simple, okay, now we'll try with the red. Not a lot of difference, very slight, but then as soon as you go up to the green, big difference. Okay, so I would suggest that actually you can get away with having just these two. So what can we do with these flex bars? Right, so my favorite, happy face, sad face. So we're going to rest the bar on your hands, and we're going to, with control, slowly come into a happy face and control it out. And then move the hands onto the top. Do the same again, really slowly and with control. Okay. You might want to move slightly away and there we go. Take control from here. Right? Slowly, you can feel the wobble. Yeah. Okay, put the hand on the top. So for wrist stability programs, people start to get a little bit stronger. These work super well. The controlled wrist. You can twist it. I get the red one. You can twist and work. So again, just for global flexion, you don't need to quite go, no, try and keep it in a good position, unless there's a good reason not to. And then it's actually really nice for some plyometrics. So if you want to just wobble, it takes a lot of control in the muscles to get this wobble under control, and it's actually quite tiring.
Yeah.
You can feel it already. You be careful, okay? You can do controlled pronation to supination. If you pop it into your other hand, this one, and have your arm down here, and we might want to control it through this range. A bit too fast. Slow, slow, slow. Don't like that. Much slower. So that's it. And it's all about control. You don't want that little ratchety movement. It needs to be really, really, really slow and controlled. And again, it's very nice because it's very visually responsive. So you can really see how controlled you are, which is great. So if I gave you a heavier one, you would find that quite tricky. Nice, slow, 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 slow. Wobble, wobble. You see that it's just giving on you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. It is hard and you need to do it with control. It's a really nice one for dart throwers motion as well, just to get people used to that radial extension on the flexion, because it really fits. And this is so replicable to function. You know, we do so many things using that dart throwers motion. So again, with control, brilliant. On the flexion, radial extension. On the flexion, radial extension. Beautiful. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, we can do the rolling. Now, this is really nice for getting that extension, for getting weight through it. It's also quite nice if you've got these roller scars, is to actually roll over here, and you can actually get a little bit of pressure and skin traction over the scars. So that's why I would use the flex bars. Okay, what else have I got on my table here? So we have this device, which is called an ergonomic hand exerciser. I've never had one of these in my clinic, but you can see that it is, again, contoured to fit into the hand. This is not something that people would want to have at home. This is something you would potentially have in the clinic. So I've just put it on. It comes with the varying, again, yellow, red, green, blue bands. So I've put it on with 2 yellow, and you can feel that you're working through range. Now I can move the range because there are these pegs on the side. So if you pull that down for me, I can actually alter these pegs and up and down. There we go. Now you're going through more range. Yeah? Or we can move them down a bit. Down. That's it. Right down here. And you've got much less to do. Yeah? Or I can actually add another onto it, for example. So they fit around these hooks. Now feel the difference. Huge difference. Yeah? Hard work. I'm not convinced who would ever be using these blue ones. I mean, maybe the next, Mr. UK, I'm not entirely sure, the man that we saw hanging from the bars, but for most of us in rehab, we'd be using the yellows and the reds. But it's quite versatile, I suppose. And certainly if you look online, it's obviously popular because there are so many versions of this out there. And then I've just got 2 more things to have a look at. This, again, it comes with all different colours. So we've just got the yellow one here. I would suggest most people will manage just with the yellow. These wedges, you can either fix them on the table, you can actually put them between your knees. So it actually works in front of you, which is quite nice. You can work a really wide hand and try and bring it right into a fist. Harder than it looks, yes. Okay. Right, you can twist with it. So you can be trying to, that's it. So again, very functional. This is what we need our wrist to be able to do. We can weight bear through it. So put your hand flat on it. Brilliant. So when you're trying to work somebody back up to weight bearing, you know, to get back to their gym or back to yoga, actually working in these controlled situations against a force there works really nicely. You can isolate the FDP muscle, so you can really work if you're pulling down, just bending with resistance, the tip, and then you can do the same with the middle. So we keep the hand really low, so we're just getting the tip of the finger to bend. Yes, like so. Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Or you can bring the finger through a bit further and get that digital superficialis. Yeah, working against the resistance. Fantastic. So again, imagination is all that stops you with these, and they're again very graded. And then the last thing to look at, just before we have a look and see if there are any questions, is our little power spin. So for those, I'm sure loads of you have used these, but have you tried one before? Yeah. You have, good. Okay, so I'm just going to start it by putting the little red thread. Now, so you can get them which auto start. We're going to put the red thread through it. You've got a gyroscope inside. I would use this very much at end stage. And in fact, I almost say to my patients, if you can do this, you're too good for me. That's when you one of these discharged, off you go, you're on your own. Most of the time, this really is end of rehab. Are you ready to take it? Okay. Now, you keep rolling. Now, most of the time you'll see, if you're sitting, it's really hard to keep the gyroscope going because you're going against gravity. And the movement really is isolated to the wrist. So what I actually like people to do is work standing up. Okay, so if you stand up and then work it. In fact, why don't I do it? And do you want to have a little look and see if we've got any questions? Should we do that? So I'm just going to start it for me. And so I would generally be working the gyroscope in this, and I'll just make sure that the shoulder is part of the movement so that it's a whole kinetic chain that's working with it, and I'm getting gravity to work with me. Okay, so don't forget really that, see, I'm obsessed now. I'm going to carry on doing this for hours. It's good for my tennis, but I'm going to speed it right up. Okay, so don't forget, there is a whole load of equipment, but what's really important for our patients is what they can do without us. It's not what they do with us that matters. We're just there to empower our patients to do what's going to make them better. So it's important to choose what's realistic for them, what they can get hold of, what they can do in their own homes. And just keep people motivated. So we keep people exercising longer than most people who drop off, including me when I needed to rehab my shoulder. Okay, Wissam, do we have some questions in there? Yes. We're just moving the computer so we can actually see.
Yes, we do. So if the patient continues to give palmar support to MCJ, which tends to hyperextend when exercising, i.e. squashed fly, will they get less hyperextension after time?
Okay, squash fly exercise. Good question. So if when somebody is doing their squash fly exercise, they collapse like me, then what I'll do is I will teach them to do it with a finger from the other hand, supporting the joint to make sure that it stays in control. Or I'll make a cone of splinting material and have them to do this motion around the cone of material so it doesn't have the option to collapse. Can you see? Because I haven't got anything, or even don't know if it'll work around it. Yeah, it sort of does around this. But a cone is a better shape. But I'll start with the support underneath the joint before you take it away, in order that they're recruiting the right muscles to get the stability around MCP and CMC joint. Hope that's answered the question.
Next question is, what is the bar called?
What is this bar called? Right, this bar is called a Theraband flex bar. And as I said, it comes in all these different, so Theraband flex bar, and they are yellow, red, green. Actually, you can probably see it a bit better on there. Again, you could say it's available from Performance Health. It's actually available from loads of places, but I would really recommend that if you want the predictability, if you're using one in your clinic and you're recommending it for a patient, it's really important they get the same brand as you, because they will be different, and there are loads and loads of makes out there that are doing the same thing, but when you actually get them in your hands, they don't feel at all the same.
Are you using the Powerball for intrinsic strengthening?
No. So the Powerball, so the question was, am I using the Powerball for the intrinsic strengthening? No, it's extrinsic. So it will work all of the muscles in the forearm, essentially. The ulnar deviators, the radial deviators, the extensors and the flexors. But if you want to do resisted work with the intrinsics, I mean, unless I'm holding it like this, in which case I am doing a little bit of lumbar pull, but really lumbar pull is this motion. So you need to do resisted either putty or sponge, or, you know, in the first place against the table, against this sort of movement here. You can pull into putty, you can pull into a sponge in this motion. And then the other intrinsics are your interossei. So they are the ones that you need to strengthen them. You need to do resisted abduction and resisted adduction. So that's where I was using the cut up pieces of sponge with the elastic band around it.
Apologies if I don't pronounce this name properly, but best exercises for the equipments.
So what was the question?
So what
exercises are there
best
for the
exercises? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now there's a question and a half. Exercises for decurvents. So decurvents, of course, is a problem, a compression syndrome at the first dorsal compartment. So it's going to affect APL and EPB, so abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis. Now, obviously, you've got a very, very acutely painful tendon or tendons, then exercise is not what you want to do in the early days. So maybe active mid-range movement only to stop tethering and to stop scarring, but you're not going to be doing resisted anything. And then you want to just slowly build. As the pain allows, you're going to slowly build. So start doing then some isometric abduction and EPB extension. And then you're going to do it within mid-range with a low resistance, and then you're going to build up and up and up. I think the last webinar, which was about the thumb, we actually talked about a whole load of different modalities for decurvents, so you might want to just look that up.
Can you give examples of ADLs you would suggest for hand therapy?
Oh, pretty much everything. Okay, the question was, can I suggest ADL activities for hand therapy? Well, pretty much everything we do uses our hands. It doesn't matter whether you're brushing your hair, or whether you're doing up a button, or whether you're writing, or whether you're playing the piano. Pretty much everything we do uses the hands. So what you need to do as a therapist is think about the goals that patient has, either functional goals, or you as a therapist have the specific muscles that you want to recruit. And then you need to think about, well, which activities of daily living or remedial activities such as games, things that you don't do normally but are more fun, can you put together to build a program that will meet those goals for that patient? So, I mean, there are so many. Everything, basically.
Can we strengthen the muscles around CMCJ to help PTs with OA CMCJ
Yes,
to help manage pain and support function?
yes, definitely. Now I'm one of those. Well, I'm not a PT, I'm an OT, but obviously hand therapist, and I do have OA CMC, and we do, we're doing a lot with MOBs and with frictional massage and with myofascial release, and our thumbs get a right pounding. I think it is a combination of strengthening the muscles that support the CMC joint. So knowing that when you do your abduction, isometric or isotonic exercises, that you do it with the thumb, the IP joint of the thumb flexed, so you're not encouraging subluxation of the CMC joint as you move into those particular positions. But it's also about splinting, and it's also about taping, and making sure you get stability before strength. So when I'm managing physios or other therapists or any of my patients with OA thumb, I will always be going for stability first before strengthening, because if I strengthen and these joints are collapsing, they're not holding the right biomechanical position, all I'm doing is making it worse. So it's really, really important, and I'll be doing things like working with this ball, working with a tennis ball, put a spot on the tennis ball, and try and just get the thumb working through range. And if, like mine, it collapses, I have to do it with a support to start with. And once I can get that control without that support, and only then could I then start strengthening it. Otherwise, I'm just strengthening the wrong things.
If you could only have one piece of equipment in your clinic, what would you choose? Hand injury, not wrist.
Oh, now that's a brilliant question. If I could have one thing in my clinic, one piece of exercise equipment in the clinic, what would it be? Okay, it's going to be between three things. It's going to be between Theraband, sponges, and Putty. And it would probably, okay, so hand, not wrist. It's going to be either Putty or sponges. I'm not sure I can be pushed on that one. I don't know. I go in phases of preferring one to the other.
Perfect, that's fine. What are your key stability exercises for OA CMC?
Okay, there are so many. Am I allowed to say go and look at the online module that I've written? So what are the key stability exercises? You need to be able to move the thumb through its full range of movement while maintaining the thumb in its correct, if I make this a bit easier for you to see, in the correct alignment. So the first exercises for OACMC are moving through range everywhere, whether it be making an O, whether it be coming across the little finger, whether it be flexing, whether it be extending. It will be about doing that while maintaining the nice angles of the thumb and not allowing collapse here or here, hyperextension here or here. So I'll do everything I can first to do that, which is about stabilizing it, and then I'll go on to strengthening. But there are so many. I just gave you two earlier with the squash fly and the circumduction, but there are many. Right, it is 1:59, so I think we probably need to stop. Brilliant questions, thank you so much. And if there are any more, then I will answer them by email, and we'll be sending the recording to everyone. Everybody who's attended, obviously we'll send you the recording so you can watch it again if you want to. And any questions that you've got following this, please just send them into the customer services team at Performance Health, and if they can't answer it, they flip them through to me and I will help you. It's been a pleasure being with you. If you've got ideas as to anything you'd like me to do a webinar on, then please let us know again via customer services. Thank you so much to Wissam for being again my wonderful assistant, and have a lovely rest of the week.